are not necessarily those of the owners, management, employers, and advertisers of WCBM.
But they should be. The Jimmy Mathis Show is sponsored by Andy Harris for Congress. The Jimmy Mathis Show is brought to you by Bread and Circuses. This is Talk Radio 680 WCBM and WCBM.com. The Jimmy Mathis Show starts now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Jimmy Mathis Show with you till 8 o'clock. 410-WCBM 680, 410-922-6680. Follow me on Twitter at Jimmy Mathis Show. On Facebook, a new website, JimmyMathisShow.com. You can go there to hear past shows. We now have podcasts of the program. Also gives you all the pertinent information as far as contributing to the show. You can email the program from JimmyMathisShow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, an awful lot going on. I wanted to start the show to talk about my senatorial campaign and where that is going moving forward. I'm not going to do that because there's a lot going on today. I will get to it, but we'll get to that later. WCBM political contributor Tyrone Keyes joined the program shortly. Congressman Andy Harris will be joining us at 6:40. Roger Stone for the Stone Zone. As I always have to preface this, we are efforting Roger Stone at 7 o'clock. We'll see what happens on that. I always joke around. One of the toughest things about this job is trying to stack the show. What do you lead with? You got to lead with what's strongest. And I really believe the strongest story of the week was the debt deal that the president signed off on. And that is what I was going to start the program with. This morning I decided to call an audible. I went down to Washington, D.C. for the March for Our Lives. I guess it's a protest. I guess it would fall in the protest category. I work in Washington, D.C. I've been a member of the media for pushing a quarter century right now. I think it's important that for those on the right, conservatives, those that support the Second Amendment, to not totally dismiss this. I said the same thing about Black Lives Matter. Any movement out there, be very careful just not to be dismissive of it. This one more than any. And I went down to Washington, D.C. very early, had a press credential for it. I was down there about 5 o'clock in the morning. There was an estimated 500,000 people that were going to attend the March for Our Lives protest today. The way that it was presented by the media was that this was an organic protest from the Stoneman Douglas High School. Obviously, the horrible shooting that happened on Valentine's Day a little over a month ago in Parkland, that it was organic. And that this protest, keep in mind, this is a global protest. Over 800 events were held around the world today simultaneously. The big one down in Washington, D.C. The purpose of the march today was to try to get Congress to finally pay attention and to take action. Obviously, the individuals that were front row center were the students that were in Parkland on the 14th. I bring up that I've been in the business for 25 years because, and I'm not bragging here, I think it's important to give a little context to my background. The radio show is a passion of mine and something that I do on the side. My day job is a video editor and a photographer by trade. And I've covered a lot of events over the last 25 years. 2 papal visits, 2 Super Bowls. A lot of things come in twos, I guess, Tyrone. 2 inaugurations. I covered the attacks of 9/11. I covered the first anniversary after 9/11. I've covered hurricanes. Covered the tornado in Western Maryland. I've covered a lot. And I've covered a lot of big events, a lot of marches in Washington, D.C. Majority of my career I've spent in Washington, D.C. I've worked for local television. I've worked for network television. I've been a creative director for a multi-$100 million advertising account. I've created TV shows. I've hosted TV shows. I've been behind the camera. I've been a director, a technical director, a producer, a floor director. The only job I haven't done is called Chiron, which is the guy that puts the words up on the screen. And I never took that job because I'm a horrible speller. So I always turned that job down. But pretty much every other job in the business I've done. The production value and the coordination that went on in Washington, D.C. today, ladies and gentlemen, was unprecedented. And I'm going to give you a little inside baseball. It may seem to be innocuous enough and not be important, but it is. The event in Washington, the event handled everything. Whoever handled the event, and we don't know who coordinated this. Now, the way that it's being presented in the media is it's this organic protest from the students. This was a show, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let me be very clear on something. The kids that were participating in it, I believe, were truthful, and I believe that they're concerned, and I don't believe that they were part of they were part of the show, but I don't believe that they were leading the show. I also believe after the horrific shooting that took place in Florida on the 14th, the walkout that they had, I believe that was organic. And I cannot imagine being in high school and having a mass shooting in your school, living through that, and seeing your friends being shot to death. I cannot comprehend that. But at some point, something changed. And at some point, and nobody knows who this is, somebody saw a value from a marketing standpoint to seize this. And before I go any further, the gun debate has been front row center for decades, and it never gets any traction. And I've said time and time again, if you can't get a conversation started after Newtown, when you have 20 elementary kids, school-age kids, are being gunned down, if that's not enough to get the conversation started, what more do you need? I think as far as the public outcry to it, that's worse than what happened in Las Vegas at Mandalay Bay. I think it pulls on people's heartstrings more than what happened in Florida in mid-February. The reason why it didn't get a conversation started is there's no trust between the people and their government. We've said this many times. It's negotiating 101. If you don't believe that you're negotiating in good faith, then there's nothing to talk about. And this could be the gun debate, immigration, a variety of things. The people don't believe that their government is being truthful. So there's nothing to talk about. There was nothing to talk about when it came to Newtown, or Columbine before that, or the Pulse nightclub, or now the situation in Florida. But the left realized something. It's not the story. That's what changed today. And being there and witnessing this, that's what's different. It's not the story. For those of you that have seen Wag the Dog, it's the show. And what you saw today was a show, a highly produced show that used the children of Florida and teenagers, and we'll get back to that in 1 second also, teenagers from across the country to paint a picture. The media had everything handed to them, from the live drops to power to internet connections. Normally when they do these events in Washington, D.C., they do them on the National Mall. The estimates that we heard from the protest today was 500,000 people. I was there, ladies and gentlemen. There were nowhere near 500,000 people. Protest also didn't happen on the National Mall. The National Mall is the piece of grass that runs from the Capitol to the Lincoln Memorial. That's what you see on the aerial views when you look at the attendance from President Barack Obama's inauguration and Donald Trump's inauguration. That's the National Mall. That's where the Women's March, the day after Donald Trump's inauguration, that's where that took place. That's not what happened today. They held it, ironically enough, All Street's Constitution Avenue, which is lined by federal agencies to the right and all the museums to the left. And when you look on the internet at just the swarm of people, because they were in a very concentrated area. And the camera angles were controlled. And when you watched it on TV, the video that was being pumped to all the networks is off of what we call a pull feed. The video was provided by whoever put this on. Highly, highly produced. With jib cameras and high definition cameras, jumbo screens, massive audio presentation. It was a revival. Same feeling you get when you go to a concert. You go for the band, but you also want the show. You want the presentation. You want the pyrotechnics and the intelligent lighting. Well, that's what you got today. Not only did it come across in person, it really came across on television. The event today had absolutely nothing to do with trying to get the attention of Congress. Now, that's the way it's being framed. We need Congress to act now. We need these gun laws changed now. How many more times do we have to go through these horrific stories? That's the way it was framed. That is not what today was about. Today was about indoctrination. Today was about reaching out to high school kids that are 15, 16 years old that will be voting during the next election. And I'm walking around downtown Washington, and I'm seeing how well orchestrated this thing is. And it's the most orchestrated, well-tuned show, media presentation that I've ever witnessed in the last 25 years. And this is, I'm talking papal visits and the Super Bowl and presidential inaugurations. It was dialed in. They did not miss a beat at any level. Now, of course, we all don't believe that a bunch of high school kids put this together. There's two costs, ladies and gentlemen, that came along with this March for Lives today. There's the security cost. That's picked up by the district. Washington, D.C., that's the cost of doing business. If you live in D.C., you're going to have marches with a lot of people. It's going to happen a couple times a year, and the security cost of that gets passed along to the citizens of the district. Then there was the production cost. Who paid for that? Well, evidently a bunch of musicians and movie stars were chipping in $500,000, $700,000 to the cause. Now, I don't know who the production company was that orchestrated this whole thing, but think about the two groups of people that I just mentioned. Movie stars, rock stars, musicians. They're entertainers. They understand how to grab your attention, how to bring you in, how to create an environment that you want to be part of. And we're going to run with this a little bit on the other side, but keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, this is Generation X. Is that correct, Is this Generation X, 16, 18-year-olds? Is that kind of the...
This is, these are millennials.
Millennials, I apologize. These are
yeah.
millennials. Millennials that through their entire young adult life, very articulate, and let me be very clear, very sincere in what they're saying and what they believe. And I respect them, by the way, for standing up and I think doing a pretty good job of making their point on a much bigger stage than I've ever been on in front of the national media. But they're millennials that through their entire life have been indoctrinated into America's not that great of a place, and there's all these things that we have to fix, and now you have this thing that you can run with. And if you think about it, they're going to vote in 2 years. And the machine that was in place today, they were registering voters, they were keeping track, they were capturing data. And we'll continue that on the other side. You're listening to the Jimmy Mathis Show. Give me a call, 410-WCBM-680, 410-922-6680. You're listening to the Jimmy Mathis Show on Talk Radio 680 WCBM.